Thank you very much, our fellow Africans, and welcome to today's episode of the Change for African campaign. And so, fellow Africans, being on Wednesday is all about our third pillar of the Change for African campaign, all about the resources that we have as an African continent and how we should be utilizing these resources to be able to make Africa great. And so today, to help us exemplify our third pillar of the Change for African campaign, we'll be using the United Nations Sustainable Goal number 7.1, more specifically its key target, which is target number 1 for goal number 7. Remember, goal number 7 is about affordable and clean energy, but its key target 7.1, it's about by 2030, we should ensure a universal access to affordable, reliable, and modern energy services. We should ensure universal access to reliable and modern energy services. And so, fellow Africans, looking at such a goal and trying to bring out the issue of resources and relating to this, because now it comes about that ensuring universal access, to affordable, reliable, and modern energy. Now, this one is, they are putting it in the universal context as how the goals were framed at first. But then, as we have said countless times, that we are Africans and Africa is our business. So we try to first exemplify or describe these things in the African stature, because problem facing Africans are common problems. So these are problems that we need to discuss them in a holy manner, in a holistic manner, if I may use that. So putting it in the African context, because the current state when it comes to the energy sectors of Africa has a good potential, or it has so many sources of energy, most of the renewable energy that are yet to be tapped into, or maybe that are not being utilized by the African people or the African continent, so that it can be able to develop Africa. Because speaking about having access to the affordability of energy, part of it in Africa still is a very huge problem. Why? Because some of the energy we're using in Africa, or some of the sources of energy we are using in Africa, some of these are actually non-renewable sources of energy, and they're actually imported from other continents or countries around the globe, meaning the affordability part of it becomes a problem, because it's first imported to Africa. So the people of Africa now being able to utilize that, it costs a lot. But then we have our own renewable energy sources, immense of them, that we can be able to tap into as Africa, so that we can generate our own energy and to run our own things in Africa. But then we have opted for the most expensive way of importing things, especially energy, because we have a lot of substantial energy, sources that can be able to generate enough energy for the continent of Africa, all the way from the hydroelectric energy. We have the solar energy. I was speaking about the wind energy. These are live and well sources in Africa, that if we tap into these sources, we can be able to have a very great Africa. And speaking about the reliability part of it and the modern energy services, now being reliable, that the source of energy should actually be reliable in terms of let's say we have some sources that are sometimes like what I used to run our industry. Sometimes you can't even rely on them, because maybe they're not substantial, and so we are limited on how, even if it's doing manufacturing or production of things, we are limited because these are not reliable sources of energy. So once we are able to utilize our own resources here when it comes to the energy sector, so the sources of energy, that will be reliable, because we are producing that ourselves, meaning that we have the substantial amount of it to be able to run our own activities in Africa. And so the modern services, because we are in a very modern world, a world that is running very fast. But looking at Africa, we still have we are having a few statistics that are over 600 million persons in Africa, in the sub-Saharan Africa, actually still use unsafe sources of energy, unreliable, and modern sources of energy. Some of the things that have existed before, things to do with wood, charcoal, kerosene. These are non-renewable sources of energy, and they have so many disadvantages, starting from the health, the health problem of the people of Africa, because these are sources of energy that are, even if you use them, still they also impact negatively to our health. This is a source of energy that actually very expensive. They lead to things to do with global warming, because speaking about charcoal, speaking about wood, these are sources that lead to us exploiting our forests. These are sources that lead to us doing what you call deforestation. When you do deforestation, meaning we are not, and you remember, these are people who are only after having something to be able to do, maybe to prepare meals. They're not about a restoration later after doing the deforestation, meaning we are cutting without even replacing. That is another problem to our planet. So for us to be able to have a continent that is progressive, a continent that is diverse in terms of how we do tap into these energy sources, to be able to facilitate the African things when it comes to the industrialization, manufacturing, and all these things, even cooking, the home, the basic uses of these things. We need to be able to tap into our own energy sources so that you can be able to develop Africa. Because once you're able to do that, this will be even cheaper for the African people, meaning that even the living standards of our people will be able to raise, only they will be able to be elevated, and through me I mean that it's very cheap, whereby everything is gotten from Africa instead of us importing. Now we are actually even creating employment for our own people in Africa. So fellow Africans, these are issues that are live and well. These are issues that we need to wake up, look at it, and we're speaking about this, and then now we want to, now after this, to have the practicality part of it, about after what we have been discussing about how we can tap into utilizing this renewable sources of energy, having a modernized way of efficient energy use, having affordable energy in Africa, so that you can develop Africa. Because Africa is a land of many resources. Africa is a land of great potential. So fellow Africans, allow me to end at that point. Let's meet tomorrow on Thursday as we discuss about our fourth pillar of the Change for African campaign, all about the living standards of the people of Africa. Thank you, and have a great time ahead. Thank you.